For two, they endanger the territorial and social integrity of the country and of its people by performing secessionist acts. And three, they also create legal and executive insecurity by establishing entity laws and institutions that contradict and compete with state law and competence. It will require institutions created in Dayton, such as the Constitutional Court, to prevent this country from falling apart, and when it comes to safeguarding the functionality of the state, my legal competences as High Representative as well. Consequently, the state-level coalition has been seriously affected. The European Union accession momentum has stalled. The functionality of the state is being undermined, and reforms have been sidelined. This development is not irreversible, but it's severe. It needs to be addressed without delay. It requires active engagement by the international community. Respected member of the Security Council, as I have reported in my current report, the general economic situation appears to be stable for the time being, despite the current crisis. However, the demographic situation in the country is not improving. The heavy loss of young and skilled members of the population constitutes an impediment to the economic and social sustainability of the country. A better understanding of the danger requires better data, ideally in the form of a new census. Alas, the discussion surrounding a new census is highly politicized. We're just waiting these days for the new UNFPA report about the demographic development in the country. Coupled with unmistakable environmental degradation and recurrent disasters, it is safe to conclude that daily life in Bosnia-Herzegovina is not getting easier. In these troubling times, Bosnia-Herzegovina has felt the unwavering support of the international community on its side against this existential threat. All members of the PIC steering board and a great number of UN members have reacted to these policies by expressing their concerns, urging to stop such disruptive actions and stressing inter alia their unwavering support to the full implementation of the Dayton Peace Agreement and for the unity and territorial integrity of Bosnia-Herzegovina. It is imperative to continue these efforts. I would also like to express hereby my gratitude to the United Nations Security Council for reaffirming this unequivocally committed to the sovereignty, independence, unity and territorial integrity of Bosnia-Herzegovina in full accordance with the Dayton Peace Agreement. I regard this statement as a compassionate support for Bosnia-Herzegovina. I note that the Serb community did not pay heed to Mr. Dodik's unlawful directives. For example, ethnic Serbs employed in state-level institutions have been pressured into abandoning their posts, but these calls and threats have been left overwhelmingly unanswered. Despite the difficult political situation, I also have no doubt about the Serb community's commitment to pursue the European path. It is clearly expressed by the opposition parties, PDP, SDS, and more. The Bosniak community has been able to remain calm despite the tensions and to continue on the path of patient dialogue, also in order to keep the country's European integration on the table. And as for the Croat community, I also notice a continuing pro-European commitment, as well as an increased willingness to engage in inter-ethnic dialogue, including in local disputes. The case of the Central District of Mostar, some details of which are present in my current report, without taking sides, constitutes a good example. In this specific case, I would prefer local actors to work out a solution among themselves rather than a solution brought about by the international community. Goodwill exists and needs to be encouraged so that I can overcome the disruptive noise that is spread by some actors. We put our trust in those who remain committed to ensuring a peaceful coexistence in one city, including different boroughs. As I hear Mayor Kordic and the head of the municipal council have taken concrete steps for solving the situation in a good manner. Let's wait and see. Let us be clear that people of Bosnia and Herzegovina can and do live together. For the most part, the communities in the country do not support extremism or secessionism. There's an ample evidence for that in daily life, but ethnocentric politics spends too much time on dividing the communities rather than uniting them. We witnessed the good and the bad developments all at once. Having said that, what is the way forward? I reported previously discrimination remains to be a complex problem encompassing many issues and groups. I therefore renew my call upon political leaders in Bosnia and Herzegovina to launch comprehensive constitutional and legal reforms to tackle this problem. Whilst the constitutional framework has to be improved, past attempts have shown the sensitivity of the matter. It is important to keep in mind that Bosnia and Herzegovina is a state of 3 constituent peoples, representatives of others and all citizens, and the protection given to all has to be safeguarded while remaining discrimination from the current constitutional framework. Such a constitutional reform process should also be aimed to address the European Commission's 14 key priorities. Needless to say, there is considerable amount of overlap between the 14 key priorities and the 5+2 agenda objectives, which are the basis of my engagement by decision of the Peace Implementation Council. The rule of law and retrenchment of rule of law is one of the most important issues. Therefore, I take this opportunity to reiterate that the way forward also requires acknowledging that Dayton and the European Union reform agenda are mutually reinforcing. The task of amending the Constitution in a way that is fully compatible with EU norms is by no means easy. I suggest that all those interested in ensuring a bright and prosperous future for Bosnia and Herzegovina organize a conference on these issues. The issue of state property in Bosnia and Herzegovina remains unsolved. This issue continues to represent a significant barrier to the country's economic development. Considering the challenges caused by the current lack of a state-level legislation on the matter, there is a need for the international community to remain engaged. As part of 5+2 agenda, I also follow my obligation to initiate a facilitation process. Thus, the challenges faced by Bosnia and Herzegovina are complex and varied, but let us be clear, the extraordinary crisis Bosnia and Herzegovina is currently facing is the result of severe attacks by some in political responsible against the Dayton Peace Agreement, encompassing the constitutional legal order of BiH, and has nothing to do with the Dayton Peace Agreement itself. It puts on it the misinterpretation of Dayton. Dayton is to be developed democratically and discussed, but not put into question. Everybody in Bosnia and Herzegovina must understand that no individual stands above the law. On the contrary, everybody has to respect the rule of law. Distinct members of the Security Council, to conclude, Bosnia and Herzegovina is facing difficult times. Nobody would have expected 30 years ago that the international community is needed as much today as it is. The peace agreement that this UN Security Council endorsed 30 years ago remains the very foundation of which the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina, with its sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence, can be built. Reopening or redefining the peace agreement challenges the basis for peace and prosperity in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This does not mean that we should not talk about necessary amendments and adoptions of this constitution. The way forward includes counter threats and attacks to its very foundation, but also implementing meaningful reforms, including in the context of the country's European integration. It is about strengthening institutional stability and functionality of the state and continuing to reinforce election integrity in view of the country's general elections in 2026. There should be a focus on. The High Rep, as an international ad hoc institution, has never intended to be permanent. But Bosnia and Herzegovina's aspirations for European integration will, for the foreseeable future, be built on the Dayton system as the foundation for its constitutional order, as a fully reorganized subject of international law, in legal continuation of the Republic of Bosnia-Herzegovina. There are no other international subjects of international law in Bosnia-Herzegovina as the state. However, it must be made clear that eventually the international community cannot determine the future of the country. The impulses and the directions must come from the domestic level. I, therefore, call on the public leaders through the country to continue their pursuit to full European integration, implement reforms, and build a well-governed democratic society that provides prosperity for the current and future generations. The international community should continue giving its support and assistance to help the country and the people of Bosnia-Herzegovina to shape their future and to give reassurance that people in this country are not forgotten. In closing, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you and your governments for the support you have provided for Bosnia-Herzegovina and the Office of the High Representative. This support is also particularly relevant in relation to the necessary executive decisions which have to be taken in the authority vested in me as High Representative, as there is no other option. It should be somehow the last resort. Thank you very much, Mr. President.